questions at the end. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. The chairman is going to start his remarks in just a moment, but I just want to let you know that we will take questions at the end of his remarks. If you'd like to ask a question, you can do it one of two ways. You can use the raise your hand function and you will be brought on screen, or if you can just want to use audio, that's fine as well. Or you can type your question into the Q&A box. That's fine. It'll be read aloud. Just please state your name and the name of your organization prior to asking the question. And I think with that, we'll get started.
Well, thank you so much, Jessica, and thank you to all the members of the media that are attending this virtual press conference today. Good afternoon, and thank you. Today is a great day for democracy, and it's a great day for free and fair elections, and it's a great day for the 20 million citizens of this state whose rights have been protected in this case. The Hochulmander has officially been defeated. And I cannot stress enough how monumental the Court of Appeals decision was. This is a group of all Democrat appointed judges by Democrat governors, 6 Democrats and 1 Republican on the bench. And frankly, there were many people who did not think that the Republican case stood a chance with them. But I will tell you that I took this job because the Republican Party needs to wage the tough fights. And the stakes were too high to allow Democrats to trample on New Yorkers' constitutional rights. I must point out that this victory would not have been possible if we did not defeat the referenda last fall that got us to this moment, in that tremendous partnership with our partners in the New York State Conservative Party and many citizens that got involved with the movement to defeat and just say no to the referenda put forward by Democrats that tried to co-opt the Independent Redistricting Commission, that tried to tinker and rig our elections going forward. Those were soundly defeated, and that set the table for the victories that we saw yesterday at the Court of Appeals. It set the table for this moment. And in doing so, we put power back into the hands of the people of this state. The law was so clearly on our side in this case, and Democrats' actions were so brazenly illegal that even these partisan appointed judges could not stomach this filthy gerrymander. The outcome of this case is as clear as day, and we have been 100% vindicated with the rulings in our favor at every level of the judiciary. The bottom line is that the Democrats in this state tried to cheat and rig the election, and they got caught and they got slapped down. Democrats intended to use their power to be a curb stomp on Republicans for at least the next 10 years or forever in their minds, to silence the voices of their opposition, to silence the voices of Republican and conservative voters in this state. But in doing so, they were also undermining the will of the people and trampling on their constitutional rights. The judge's decision is a total rebuke of their brazen attempt to steal this election. And I've said it 1,000 times, I will say it again. It's not just a gerrymander, it's a Hochulmander. Kathy Hochul is directly responsible for this. Kathy Hochul said it herself in her very first interview after becoming governor, that she would use her power to push in gerrymandered districts and ensure that Joe Biden has more Democratic votes in the House of Representatives for his disastrous agenda. Kathy Hochul has the same craven disrespect for the law as her former partner and mentor, Andrew Cuomo. This is the arrogance and the lawlessness that is the consequence of one-party Democrat rule in New York. And it's not just the law that they disregard. It's also a disregard for the will of New York voters, who voted twice to take redistricting out of the hands of politicians and to give district drawing powers to an independent bipartisan commission. Democrats made a mockery of this commission, and they undermine their work every step of the way. Now, perhaps they always planned to have it fail so they could take the control in the back room, draw the maps the way they wanted them, and shove them down on the people's throats. And we called this since day one, and it played out exactly as we warned. And when it did, we vowed to take it to the courts because the law in the Constitution was crystal clear. Now, I understand that this is going to be a bit chaotic as we try to navigate the impact and the steps forward. And this chaos lies squarely with Kathy Hochul, Letitia James, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, Senator Mike Gianaris and every legislator that voted for these illegal maps. Now, I do find it a little curious that Senator Gianaris happens to be MIA when this ruling came out. Perhaps he has a little bit of a case of constitutional COVID right now. This should be a wake-up call for Democrats. I doubt it will, because they're already trying to spin the most absurd and dishonest narrative, but they should pay attention because people understand what is happening and they're angry and they're going to vote this year. They've had enough of illegal power grabs and they've had enough of politicians' arrogance in the hypocrisy. And when we get done with this election, every single voter is going to know and hold those people that did this accountable in November. And we will break down the wall of one-party Democratic control of Albany when we elect a Republican governor this November. So at this time, I thank you and we'll answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, let's see. We'll start with Jimmy.
Hey, Nick, can you hear me?
I can.
Hey, do you believe that the rest of the primaries should be moved to an August date to match the court order regarding the congressional and state Senate primaries?
I don't at this point think that it's feasible to fuse everything into a single primary. I mean, these are very unique circumstances. It's while it might seem, cumbersome to have two primaries, it would also be very cumbersome to start all of the processes over with. I mean, this comes in the middle of, serious statewide elections. There's races for the assembly. These assembly maps are not a part of this discussion. And we're not litigated, but we have obviously, statewide politics that's already full steam ahead. We're on the verge of absentee ballots going out. I think it would be too disruptive to shut that June primary down at this point.
Okay, thanks, Jimmy. Let's go to Henry with WPIX.
Hey there, do you have me?
Yes, we do. Hi, Henry.
Hi there, how you doing, Chairman? Thank you for taking the time. Was wondering if you, I realize this is somewhat beyond your control, but would support a national or state-by-state constitutional amendment similar to New York's in 2014, which would have an equal and opposite effect in impacting GOP maps in other states like Texas and North Carolina? And would that not be more fair? And then we wouldn't be having these conversations nationally.
Well, I think that each state should have its own ability to dictate, its rules of engagement. And this was passed popularly by the people of the state of New York. I believe in states' rights and our ability to make decisions on a state-by-state basis. The people of this state, and it certainly wasn't just Republicans, but it was people of all party affiliations that came out, voted for a referendum that was put forward in a bipartisan fashion that called to remove politicians from the process, to create an independent commission. The state of California has got something very similar, an independent commission, and it really dictates the outcome. And the sad part is politicians that were in power tried to manipulate this independent commission here in New York, and they've been slapped down for it. And that's where we find ourselves here today. So we're going to have a very chaotic 2022 election here, but going forward, we have fairness for the next decade is what our hope is. But I don't believe that a national standard is necessarily a right fit. It really should be determined on a state-by-state basis.
Okay, thanks, Henry. We're going to go now to John Campbell with WNYC Radio.
Hello, John.
Hi, Chairman. Two questions for you. One, why weren't the assembly maps challenged? Is there an opportunity to challenge them now? And then the other thing I was just hoping you could talk about, this is a logistical challenge for your candidates, even though it is a victory for you. I mean, you've had candidates that have been campaigning on a particular district for a couple months now. They have no idea what these districts are going to look like now. How do you manage that logistical challenge for your candidates, and where do they campaign now?
Well, it is a real challenge. I mean, just briefly on the assembly, I think that the decision was made on a conference basis on, whether or not to litigate at the time. And that decision was made within the conference at the assembly level not to litigate. So I believe that ship has sailed in this regard, but they're, having the opportunity to have, new maps for the Senate, I think, is a welcome possibility, especially on a fair basis drawn, by a special master. But my heart does go out to some candidates that have raised and spent a lot of money, gone and built relationships in very new districts. I mean, we had some members in my home area, the western part of the state, that had to traverse, districts. They had 7 counties, now they had 14 in very different 14 counties. One district in particular went all the way up to the shores of Lake Ontario from Niagara Falls. That was 250 linear miles. And those candidates have spent a lot of money, a lot of petition efforts, a lot of effort. Unfortunately, that's for naught. I expect pretty different outcomes from a special master than what were very gerrymandered maps to try to make those extremely red so that other districts wouldn't be. And I think it cuts both ways. There are districts downstate that are going to have a far different dynamic. I certainly can't expect a master to think it's a sound decision to take a Nassau County district all the way up around the Sound and into Westchester. I think that was one of the most ludicrous examples of gerrymandering that we saw. Was that district, but it will, hopefully we get answers in fairly short order. But this is going to create a period of uncertainty, and some people might find themselves without a seat to run for. That's another dynamic. I mean, perhaps some people that made announcements will reconsider those announcements and get back in races that they had opted out of. So there's, I guess, just when you think you know the answers, they change the questions. And that's what this has created, some uncertainty for even the wisest political minds in either party. And hopefully there's some clarity very soon from the Judge McAllister and the special master is what the timelines are, what the processes are, and how our candidates will achieve ballot access eventually.
Where do you tell the candidates to campaign right now? I mean, do you tell them to take a break? Do you tell them to campaign on the Democrat maps? I mean, what do you tell them?
Well, I don't think the Democratic maps would be an accurate portrayal. I think it's probably far likelier to look to the previous heart of the district. But, this is all things that are being surmised. I mean, the answers lie with the special master, and he has a tremendous amount of authority under the watchful eye of Judge McAllister to present a fair and honest map process for the people of this state. So, I don't have any more answers than your guesses. And we probably would encourage candidates to probably do more fundraising than glad handing right now.
Okay, great. Next, we're going to go to Zach Williams with the New York Post.
Hello, Zach. Congratulations on the new position.
Thanks. Hope everything's well with you, Nick. I had 2 questions. One of them was, well, first would you support another constitutional amendment to tweak the current rules, which obviously haven't led to a result that either party wanted, much less New York voters? And secondly, Republicans like yourself are really handing it to the Democrats after this court decision. Should New York Republicans be more vocal about gerrymandering in other states like Florida?
Well, I'm responsible for the New York Republican Party and the New York process. I campaigned in every corner of the state last year against referenda that would legalize rigged elections in this state, and we beat them. We beat them in this dark blue state. We beat them big. We didn't beat them small. The New York State Constitution outlaws gerrymandering. I don't know anything about the Florida State Constitution. I am not an expert on redistricting, but I know what was done to the people of this state was attempted criminal activity, trying to violate the law and the Constitution. And it's been struck down by the highest court in our state in a clear, Democrat majority Court of Appeals went and slapped this down completely. So I don't know that the intimate details in Florida or North Carolina or any other state for that matter, but I know our state's constitution, this was a direct violation of.
But do you think that maybe another amendment might be in order to clarify this process, so maybe 10 years from now it's a little easier?
I would really love if this could be done in an honest and fair way. But, let's face facts. When amendments are put forward by the legislature, they're dishonest. They tried to dishonestly do it last year. But luckily, we were able to get people's attention in a big way and tell them what they were up to. They make everything sound so rosy. But even the proposals that would have changed the rules of the commission before the commission had ever been impaneled, people saw through that. So I'm not sure that, another amendment under the current configuration of our state government's in order. Perhaps if we have balance restored, and, it'd be really refreshing if we could ever have honesty and just have, a panel of experts come together and say, this is how this should be constructed 10 years from now. We shouldn't have to go to the highest court in the land to get satisfaction. It shouldn't have to be this way, but we are the most litigious election state in America. I mean, I talk to lawyers, I think sometimes more than I talk to strategists, and that's not how this should have to work. But sadly, with the legislature as lopsided in looking to put their thumb on the scale on every single measure, we are forced to go to the courts to get satisfaction too often. So if there was a way to do it honestly, Zach, I would be all for it. I just have doubts.
Thanks.
All right, next we'll go to Yancey Roy with Newsday.
Hello, Yancey.
Hi, guys. Some of this was covered in the other questions, but I'm wondering if you think it's fair to say that Republican chances of winning more seats than 4, which was sort of the unofficial tally in the way the partisan leaning was in the maps that just got thrown out, your chances are much better now than picking up more than 4 seats. Even if we don't know what the final map looks like, I would think from your perspective, you can't do any worse than what you were staring at before yesterday.
Well, I think I'm a pretty practical political leader. I'm not a hopeless optimist, but the way I even looked at the Democratic plan in the year that I believe that Republicans will have at the ballot box, I thought we had an opportunity to actually grow our delegation from, to be larger, at least on a percentage basis of what we hold in the state within the congressional delegation. Because we have some excellent candidates running for Congress right now in districts that on paper look pretty poor, but by performance in what we saw last year in our local elections, particularly in Long Island, we were very bullish on picking up some of those seats that Democrats wanted to put in the bank as their own. Again, they're running radical progressives. We're running practical people that have been proven commodities at the ballot box. I do think that this will bring more balance. The judge's map from 10 years ago really indicates the population of the state. About a third of the seats at any given time had been in Republican hands. That's roughly the population or our share of the total voter enrollment. I expect we'll see fairness and honesty. I mean, when I looked at some of those districts that were gerrymandered to create super red districts in upstate, whether it was the district Claudia Tenney was running for, or Congressman Chris Jacobs, I mean, you had a district that included 4 television markets, countless newspapers, and voters of very different mindsets from one end to the other. It was just an attempt to pack as many red voters into one district as possible. And, that being slapped down, those districts bringing more balance to their surrounding districts, I think will be a very good thing and should put, even more wind in our sails going forward. David Wasserman, who is the DC self-appointed expert in all worlds of redistricting, said, he countered Chairman Jay Jacobs' statement yesterday saying that, Democratic values are going to be their key to victory rather than the fact that they lost to what they were trying to achieve in the gerrymander. He said, there's no way to spin this. This cost national Democrats 3 to 4 seats.
Let me ask you just a follow-up on something, a follow-up on a theme that you had there about packing districts on Long Island. You're quite aware they made Andrew Garbarino's district much, much more favorable for a Republican while dividing up the Zeldin district, right? Do you expect to see both of those districts changing under a new map? Maybe Garbarino's district being not so Republican, maybe Zeldin's district being a little bit more Republican as we go forward?
I would surmise, and it's no better guess than you would have, Yancey, that we would see more balance than as many Republicans packed into one as, to strip from the other. I think the districts as they have existed are pretty balanced. But really, and the master's got extraordinary leeway in this situation, but he was hired by a judge to make fairness. So I would think that you would have a final work product that would show fairness. Okay, any other questions out there?
Yep, sorry, I didn't realize I was on mute. Next, we're gonna go to Nick Reisman with Charter Spectrum.
Unmute. There we go. Hey, you kind of touched on this, but just to be clear, based on what you know from what you've read or heard about Jonathan Service, do you trust him to be the special master in this instance? Just based on what you've seen so far.
I will give, and I think that the decision that came forward for Justice McAllister was extremely thoughtful and well presented and thorough. Judge McAllister has, chosen the special master. I give the special master the benefit of the doubt, going into this as a neutral party. I don't believe there's any ties, within New York politics, but he's an expert. His reputation's on the line. He's here and hired to create fairness and honesty in a process that has been rife with corruption and partisan gerrymandering. So I think that we have to give the benefit of the doubt that the judge wants the proper outcome and chose someone capable of delivering that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Next, we will go to Bill Mahoney with Politico.
Hello, Bill.
Hi, Chair. So what does this mean for the state Senate? Is that winnable by Republicans, do you think, if this goes from a line that was, if we had a set of lines 10 years ago that was drawn by Republicans, if this goes to one that is drawn by a special master rather than Democrats as they hoped, is there going to be enough of a midterm wave where you could feasibly go back to where you were in 2016?
I suppose anything's possible, and we have to see what the outcome is. The map that we're currently, the Democrats have a super majority on, was a map that gave us a majority at one point this decade. 2018 was a rough tidal wave against us. 2018 could very well be a pretty rough tidal wave against Democrats as well. Or I'm sorry, 2022 could be a very rough tidal wave in the same exact fashion. So there were, as you well know, and it's been well documented, there were people that election night in 2018 didn't know they really had much of a race and were swept out to sea. Wave elections are very, very tough in swing areas. If we truly have a special master that's working towards creating fair boundaries, anything's possible. So yes, we could go back to that. We will, I believe, be in an extremely strong position to break the supermajority and to make gains. So, we'll see what the outcome of the map is.
Thank you.
So, next, we're going to go to Josh Solomon with the Times Union.
Hello, Josh.
Hey, Chairman. Can you hear me?
I can.
Great. Two questions. One, following up on some of the questions you had before, but do you see a lane outside of a change in leadership and an honest amendment coming forward of a process that doesn't end up in the courts next decade to decide what the maps look like? Is there a route that you can foresee and one that you would support? And then the second question, a little different, is if as a remedial map, sorry about that, if a remedial map shows that Mineola is drawn into the 3rd Congressional District, would you encourage or support Jack Martin's running for Congress?
I'm not going to get into individual candidacies and what ifs. On that, I mean, our local leadership does a very good job, especially on Long Island, of picking stellar candidates, and I think that'll continue. But I hate to be a pessimist about our ability to get something clean out of Albany, but under the current configuration, I don't think you can get an honest amendment that's in the best will of the people. I mean, Andrew Cuomo, I believe Dean Skelos and Shelley Silver, that's a hell of a trio, none of which are in politics anymore. And all were, run out in disgrace. God rest, Shelley Silver's soul. But they put poison pills in there in that process to, leave wiggle room so that the maps could come back to the, the basically the political bosses of the chambers. And so, was it 100% pure? No, but it was better than what the Democrats tried to do to us last fall, trying to carve out a piece of that independent redistricting commission and really remove the independence from that commission as it existed. And, what happened with the whole thing was a mockery. We deserve better. And I haven't studied the California model, but it's one that has at least been in place for a few, decades now, and a few layers of redistricting. There are other states that have models. Sadly, New York reform never comes based on real study and real honest reform. It comes with the whims of the day's news and someone trying to score political points. So, in a new administration, if a Republican's governor, I mean, I think it's something they should absolutely take up, clean up this process once and for all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. It appears we have just one more question. If anyone else wants to ask a question and doesn't have their hand raised, just please do so now. Otherwise, our final question will be from Michael Aronson with the Daily News editorial board, who asked, as the court ruled that the whole process was wrong, should the assembly map also be invalidated?
Well, not being a legal expert, I think the fact that it wasn't litigated, would take that off of the table, in that regard. Again, perhaps that was an error, not litigating that at the outset, but each chamber had a voice in, whether or not to participate with that litigation. So I don't think that there were any drastic changes in the assembly map from one year to the next. Is particularly as a lot of the incumbency went, and perhaps that's why that legal challenge wasn't met. So, unfortunately, I think that disqualified, that situation from taking place.
Okay, it appears we've concluded the question portion, and we can wrap up.
Very good. Well, thank you very much for the interest and for joining us here today. We're greatly appreciative, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon in person.
Thanks, everybody.